All right. Today we're going to be designing a worm composter. This will be something that you dig into your garden, and then the worms can go in and out of these little holes right here. You'll be able to take the lid off and then put compost into it whenever you need. We're going to start out by creating a new file. This is going to be in two pieces, so we're going to start off with the bin. The first sketch that we're going to do, you'll hit your sketch up in the top left hand corner, select a plane. We're going to click on the top plane. You're going to view normal to sketch. Up in the left hand corner, you're going to click a center circle. We're going to click and click. The bottom of our composter we're going to want to be 7 inches. And this composter we're making is going to be specifically made to fit on just about any 3D printer. And that's where we're getting our dimensions from. Most 3D printers are sitting about 8 by 8 by 9 inches. So that's what we'll create this bin and lid and everything in order to accommodate. We're going to be going with a loft. So we'll need to make another we'll need to make another plane to put our second sketch, and we'll want this bin about 8 inches tall, so we'll want it 8 inches from our other circle. The second sketch, we'll click on this plane, right click, view normal to sketch plane, and we'll want these circles lined up with each other. So the first click that you do is in the origin right here, and then you'll do another click to put it in the spot. For a dimension, the dimension is right here, but I've been clicking on D for a dimension. It makes it really easy to click and dimension. That'll be 8 inches. Click the check mark right here, and we'll use these two circles to create our loft. So the loft will be up here in the left hand corner. You can hover over it and it'll say loft. And you'll need to click two profiles. So one will be our first circle and the other will be our second circle. You can see how they come together just like that. Next we'll want, this is a solid cylinder right here. So we'll want to shell it out. So we'll have a shell right here. And for shell, you'll want to essentially click on whatever the opening is that you want your shell to be. So technically we could have this, go all the way through. So we could have 2 openings if we wanted to, but it's going to be a bin, so we just want the top open right here. The thickness of our shell is going to be 0.125, and we'll want this going into the inside. That'll be important later. Next, we'll make our chamfer on the bottom. As I said, we're going to be 3D printing this out, so we'll want to use a chamfer rather than a fillet. Fillets usually are harder to 3D print, especially when they're on the bottom of the object. This is where the build plate is going to be, and if you make the fillets too big, then you'll need to create some support. See here, equal distance 0.25, and there's our chamfer right there. You can see it goes in the top and on the inside as well. Let's make that 0.5. That looks a little bit better. Next, we'll want to make the holes for the worms to go in and out of. So we'll click on our front plane right here. Click sketch in the upper left hand corner, and for our holes we're going to do a slot, and you can find that underneath the circle right here as an ellipse. We'll want this lined up with the origin, so that'll make it a little bit easier later, and also line this one up vertically. Now we're going to dimension. we'll make this 1 inch by, let's go with 2 inches. And then we'll dimension this from the top. We'll make that 3 inches. And you kind of want a lot of material between the top and the hole, just because you don't want bugs flying in on the side. So these holes have to be filled up with dirt, or dirt has to come up all the way to above the hole, right? So the higher you put the hole, the less tolerance you have between the top of the lid and the hole. So 3 will be a good distance for that. Let's press OK. We're going to want to extrude, and we're going to extrude sketch 3, and we want this to be a remove, and we just want a hole through the side, so let's go with, say, 5 inches to make sure we get that hole there. Press OK. That'll just be one of the holes, but we'll want this to go all the way around, so let's do a circular pattern to make that work. Normally with patterns, it assumes you want a part, so we're actually going to do a feature pattern instead. So our feature is going to be this extrude right here, and we'll need an axis to go around. So actually we're not ready for that yet. Let's go back to our sketch, and let's do a construction line. And you can do that by clicking on the line and also the construction button right here as well. And that'll give us our axis to rotate this around. If you just click on the origin and then make sure that you have the line right next to your cursor right there. That means you have a vertical line going. And that'll give us our axis to go around. So now we can go back to our circular pattern. We need to go back to feature, click on our feature, which will be our extrude, and then the axis of the pattern will be this axis that we had in our sketch. So that puts 4 instances around the unit, but let's go with 8 instead. That looks like a little bit better. Press OK. And then these aren't the only set of holes that we want, so let's make another set down below. So let's do a linear pattern. And we're not going to do parts, we're going to do features. And we want to do our circular pattern. And the direction, we're going to click on the same axis right there. So see it moves all these up. So we'll want this to go down instead of up. And the distance, let's do 2 inches. Let's see if that works. No, let's go with 3 inches. That works. Much better. And if you look at our pattern, right, it's missing a hole right here. And that's because we need to include our extrude in the features to pattern. So the extrude isn't part of the circular pattern, so that'll have to be added into the linear pattern right there. And then we'll just hide the sketch right here, and then hide all of these planes right here. And that'll have us move on to the lid. Gonna create a new part for that. Go over and open up a new part. And we're going to do essentially the same thing that we did with the bin, just kind of creating the lid. So we're going to do a sketch, do the top. Let's go with a center point circle. Let's right click, view normal to sketch plane. So we have this all lined up. And let's press D for dimension. And make that 8 inches. Press OK. And extrude this 0.125 inches. and this will be the top of our lid right here. Now we're going to make a small area to go into the bin, kind of so the lid fits snugly, right? So we're going to make another sketch, and this one is also going to be a circle right here. So we're going to be making this lip, and because the lid tapers down as we go, it's going to be kind of hard to make this lip in the same size as the other one. So we can just recreate the same thing and then cut it off, right? So we'll just recreate the inside of the bin and taper it off just like the bin goes. So this will be 8 inches minus 0.25 for the inside of the material of the bin, right? Because the shell was 0.125 on each side, right? And then we'll create the tolerance of 0.03125. So it'll be a pretty snug fit. Press OK, and then from there we're going to make a plane just like before. Make it 8 inches. Press OK, and on this plane we're going to do sketch. We're going to right click, view normal to sketch plane, and we're going to do a center point circle just like before. And we're going to dimension this one, and it's going to be the same thing, but it's going to be 7 inches minus 0.25 minus 0.03125. So that'll be a 32nd of an inch for tolerance. And then press OK. So now we'll loft these two together, and then that'll give this the inside of the bin right there. Press OK. And now let's make another plane as a cutting tool. So we'll make another plane here. Yeah, make it 1 inch. And then we'll use split right here. We'll click on the part that we want to split, and then the entity that we want to split it with is plane 2. And you can see it created our cut for us right there. And then press OK. Now we have an inside of our bin right there, perfectly made. And why don't we shell this out as well, because we don't want to 3D print all that out. So let's do a shell right there, do 0.125, and that'll give us a nice little part to put inside the bin and cover the bin. Now we'll need some handholds to take the lid off and put the lid back on. So let's start another sketch, but let's clean up our planes real quick. This is a lot of planes going on right here, and we probably don't need our right, top, and front. Origin we'll probably still need. Let's right click, view normal to sketch plane, and to make our handholds, we're gonna want something that our fingers can fit inside, but is not too far apart. So let's dimension this, and we're gonna do a construction line. So we can just dimension 1 dimension instead of 2. We're going to do a point on the construction line wherever the midpoint is, and that midpoint we're going to coincidence with the origin. So these will always be, the middle will always be at that origin. So we can dimension this line right here, make it 3 inches, and they'll move apart just like that. Then let's make the circle 1.5. We'll make that equal. And then we don't need a full circle, so let's do a line. And we'll make the line goes straight through the circle, like so. We'll do the same thing on this side as well. So click the line, make sure it's vertical, and then we can coincident this line with the center point, just like so. Okay, press OK. Now we are going to do a few things with this sketch in order to get this to work right. So the first thing that we're going to do is extrude, and we're going to remove the material, and you'll kind of see why we have to do this beforehand. We're going to press OK, and then we're going to unhide that sketch, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to extrude probably 2 inches up in the opposite direction, like so. Press OK, and then we're going to want to use our shell again on each one of these. Do 0.125. Press OK, and then those are our little finger slots, so we can take this in and out of the bin easily. So we don't need this sketch anymore. Now we can take all 3 of these parts, 1, 2, 3, and boolean them. Let's make them all come together. And then we can just use a fillet and fillet both sides, like so. .125, so you can kind of see it, and we can probably do a chamfer on the bottom, make it a little bit easier to use these. We won't be able to go to 0.5, so let's do 1.125, and that's our lid. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section below. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Thank you.